Hi YouTube friends, important update about the reality, the nature of reality, and that we are creators of our reality. Now, we are immersed in a very complex reality. And you know that it is multidimensional, so it has different densities. On a density higher than we are a higher station of identity. Now we may call this the higher self, and depending on which density we are mastering, this may be on the 6th dimension, it may be on the 9th, and etc. I'm not gonna. It's not a value ladder. It's not something for our ego to extract value from, like I'm a higher dimensional being or whatnot. It is important to know that we are all of these identities. That we are the 3rd dimensional, 4th dimensional, 5th dimensional, 6th dimensional, and higher. Now, when we talk about densities, people out there have different scales. So they say there's 8 densities or 12 or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I want to talk today specifically about Elohim. And when everything comes into creation from source, or where everything is unified in a singular existence, consciousness and energy, they are one singular existence. It's like the infinite bliss light. From that light, the mind is created, which becomes a code, basically, an infrastructure that creates itself into every subsequent dimension. So beings that are really close to source, they are less defined as form. They're more etheric. And so Elohim is you on a higher level, on a higher density, and it is sort of a father-mother being that is made out of codes, and it is made out of spirit. So it doesn't look this defined, it isn't this complex, it is very vast, and it is more basic. And it's created from light codes. So if you would see Elohim, that body would look like a spiritual body that has kind of like letters, sequences of letters going around. And the program of this reality, because the 5D or whatever reality you're experiencing in this, because so every subsequent density is coded from the Elohim down into the human experience. And in human experience, we can be operating in coherence with higher dimensions, or we can be simply operating in 3D, 4D, 5D, and then trying to get into that unified state where we are coherent with every density, and then we can be also avatars of the source. If you are able to create coherence, you can be fully online in every density, which makes you God. Now, if there is separate dimensions and there is no harmony and coherence throughout densities, then we might say we're simply human and we are not connecting to source, which can be true. It doesn't mean that we are not source, but it just means that the station of identity where we are operating, we are learning how to maneuver this reality and be creative. And so as you're going up the chakras and you're activating each chapter of your experience, you're mastering something, and then you're going to the next level of the game. if all levels of the game are mastered, which can be done from this human perspective as well as any other perspective. So if you're living in a 6th dimension or you're living in a 9th dimension, you can be connected and coherent with source or not. You can make a mistake and go into a creation that is not aligned. And so, of course, the further from source we are, we have more opportunities to create mistakes, because it's just the reality is more complex. Now we live in this very complex reality, and the ways that we relate to each other, the codes that we are operating within, the codes of manifestation of our own reality. Think of it as a video game, because as above, so below, the video game concept and the idea and how we create video games, it's actually sort of an analogy for how our own experience is created. It's a quantum holographic manifestation that has its own program, that has its own code, and then becomes space, time, and phenomena. So the codes that come from Elohim, because they're very close to source, are harmonized codes, or divine codes, if you will. And then these codes go down dimensions and they create different lives on different planes of existence, different planets in different densities, all the way to very basic organizational structures of elements, and then the elements produce different vibrations, different atomic structure, molecular structure, and then life forms, etc. So we humans are a very complex living entities that we can be existing in synergy, in coherence with every platform, every level of the game, where then we experience divine unity, and there is no offset between the channels, between the different layers, between the different levels or densities of reality, but it's all functioning together. At which point you are a sovereign being, you are a god of your own timeline, and your potentiality of creation is infinite, and also your form is eternal. So that means there's, even in the physical form, there's no aging, there's no death, there's just no even time. You are consciousness beyond space and time, you are source itself, and then you are every subsequent density. And in this third density, it is possible to live in this type of coherence. And when we talk about the Buddha or Christ, or our own Buddha or Christ selves, or that is the integration of all of the densities. Now it's very hard sort of to master having this in everyday life. Now what makes it hard is that we are social beings. So we learn from our surroundings. But now, being in a 4th density or 5th density or 3rd density, which are just also different levels of human experience depending on where our awareness is predominantly based. So we live in this reality and we coexist with everybody. Now, the words that we exchange, the concepts that we exchange, the social structuring, what we are taught in school, the foods that we eat, everything is code, and we are consuming that code. We are programming ourselves through the songs that we watch, the media that we watch, the cultural trends, the food that we eat. We're always receiving and then we are emitting code. In effect, even if we are not operating on coherence of all densities, even if we are just in 4D, we are still creating our own reality experience. We are still consciousness that is one consciousness, God consciousness, but we might be a subset, a fragmented subset of the absolute self that creates their own reality according to whatever code we are sending, we are inputting and emitting. So this makes it hard to kind of like, we are talking about escaping the matrix right now. And that really means escaping the codes that are not unified with the origin, which is the source, which is the beginning of creation of this emanated reality also. So imagine a tree growing a branch, and then that branch is branching out into smaller branches, and then on one point there is a infection or a mutation, and then one branch that is sticking out of another branch that is sticking out of the tree trunk is getting sick, it's withering, and then it's dying. Even though the tree is still healthy, one leaf, one branch, or all the leaves on that branch that become sick, they're struggling and they start to wither and die. And they might be, even it might be spring and all the other branches are pooping flowers. That's like the branches are creating flowers and fruits, but one branch is like not having a good time. It is mutating because some influence that damaged the branch. So we call it ailment, sickness, right? So in the third density and fifth density, the third density and the fourth density, we have this. We are fractals of these higher densities, of these higher codes. We are fractals of Source, fractals of Elohim, and every subsequent density. And then, if we cannot connect to the tree, we might be influenced to get that life force and to grow and evolve using that life force from the source or the tree of life. Then we might start to have a problem. Now we are still conscious, we are still animated, the life is still happening, but if we're not getting source energy, then we need to evolve in a different way. And that way might start to be trying to get energy from the world around us, which creates parasitic life forms. Like, let's say, now this tree branch starts to like evolve, throwing like little lianas to the other tree branches and sucking life force from these branches, making them weaker because it is already evolving from a corrupted state. So this analogy is sort of very important if we are ascending back to source where we came from into this complexity, and we want to expand and branch out the tree of life, and then we want to make connection to that, so so that we are unified and have this experience of this very complex potential. We are very detailed. We humans, we can go and play with so many unique little things and get very, very focused in the detail. And this is what Source wants, because Source is very abstract. It just wants everything. And then Elohim, they want to code realities to have many, 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 many different potentials. And then when you come down to the human, oh yes, you can play with so many instruments, you can play with so many different experiences, and we are very detailed. We can go into very, very complex and detailed explorations. And this is also why we are so many, everybody in our own unique diversities. We are capable of really exploring the potential of this whole universe and driving that potential into into such detail. Now, the problem is the branching out of the tree of life. When it came down to earth, a lot of people, a lot of civilizations, a lot of people that interface with our reality, and even higher dimensionals that interface with our realities, we are all one, okay? But as individuals, as collectives, we do not always create balance. We sometimes create disbalance. And where is this balance, there is no coherency with the previous dimension, and then the previous one, and then the previous one, all the way up to Source. So now we are born, we are incarnate in this cycle, and then we go to school, and like what we are taught is a distorted code. And then we are given foods, but the codes of these foods also become not organic. And then we have all these scenarios that we play out within our intellectual capacities and even spiritual teachings or religious teaching, and how we relate to one another. And all of these stories, popular culture, songs, movies, many of these creations do not begin and end in that which is organic, meaning it has coherency throughout space, time, and dimensions. So we are in a confusing world because we are social beings, and then we tend to learn from everybody around us, and then when we learn or we hear what others are saying, we receive the codes. And we may just feel frustrated with the world. When we are a kid, when we are in school, we may just feel like this is frustrating, like they're making me do something, they're making me learn something, and it just feels inauthentic or inorganic to you. You just might feel frustration and resistance to have to go to do your job or go to school or be in a relationship or whatever, or even what your parents are telling you is right or wrong to do, and you have perhaps just maybe felt frustrated with this reality. I know I did. Why? Because our heart feels in its innocence that something is corrupt. But that corrupt might as well be a status quo, a default, normal reality for everybody else, because they already forgot the God self, and they're just operating from what they know and what they repeat every day. So that distortion, that corruption, that mutation of the code is now taken for granted by everyone. And this is when we say, well, okay, we're escaping the matrix. we are learning to feel and discern that the roles that we play with each other in the society and the things that we consume, like ideas and ideologies and all kind of patterns and codes, the things that we speak about, the things that we hear about, the things that we even make popular music or TV shows out of, it's like not infused with an organic code. And then you are in that and it becomes tiring and it becomes exhausting. Why? Because all of the realities that are not coded in the organic matter and have coherence, they're consumptive realities that take energy. To actually participate in these realities that are disconnected from source, every participation will take energy out of you. Participation in a relationship, in a society, in a place of where you are going to work, like in general, many like 9 to 5 and job environments and many societal environments feel like they're taking energy. And the foods that we eat, they take energy from us because there's something wrong with the recipe, but it's just taken for granted because everybody's like eating that. There's no other way. It seems like you're in a reality where nobody's offering another way. And then we, boom, have a spiritual awakening. We're like, oh, what the F? What the F is everybody doing? And then you see that all of these people, they're just perpetuating in a kind of like a zombie mode. They're perpetuating the default, what has been there, what has been playing out throughout their lives. And they're just being slowly consumed. And then we experience aging, not as just expanding the maturity, but we're actually aging, that it starts to look like we are going into entropy. The body starts to wither and there's less and less life force, and then people die. And we call it the karmic cycle, the samsara, the cycle of rebirths, because we are rebirthing and we're dying if we weren't able to connect all of our dimensions of this multidimensional being that is your avatar, that is your human being. If we are not able to connect that to source and maintain the coherency. So I had a spiritual awakening I guess almost 12 years ago, and I didn't know what was happening, but my life force was decoding me and all of my energetic memory from the codes that I have previously recorded from this world. And then at one point I became completely coherent. And in this coherency, or at several points, I became completely coherent. So at the same time, I was Source, and I was Yovan, and I was my 6th-dimensional self, and I was my 12th-dimensional self, and everything in between. It was just working as a coherent, harmonious experience. And it's effortless, and it feels so energized. And you don't necessarily age, or you don't need to eat anything or anything like this. And then I started to be confused about belonging, because it felt like I'm in this world where I don't belong. But it's actually, I was in the real world, and everybody around me, they weren't belonging into that world which is eternal and real, but they were still belonging inside of some corrupt codes, and they were still participating in these scenarios, in these, well, it's usually dramas, because there would be a sort of energetically negative outcome. You would lose energy into some in some kind of like distortions, conflicts, or whatnot. And so I felt a little bit off, I felt a little bit alone, and then every time I went into the world to sort of like play the games that everybody's playing, I've learned this thing. I can transform this reality of existence, and I can, by my thoughts, because I'm source, by my thoughts I can transform the food if I am in the coherence. And then I can still eat it, and I'm just eating source. And the molecular form, the wine turns into water, water turns into wine, the cheeseburger turns into prana, or like whatever. It's all a holographic image. But then I thought, okay, great, I can just live life like everybody else. But no. The things that people speak about and what I participated in, it got me to record this mutated codes again, because everybody's just like going and playing this. We're still playing this out as a collective. Maybe not, maybe yes, I'm not saying. Because the law of assumption makes me actually create that if I say we're still perpetuating that. So I might just reverse that, and I might just say this, like, we are out of it, we are coming out of it, and we are already out of it, because all realities exist at the same time. So your highest self exists right now outside of this corruption. But where your consciousness is subscribing, it might be subscribing in a distortion which is not eternal version of you, and it is not the eternal source connected version of this world, but it just might be something that is presented as a reality. But now I'm going to tell you how I made mistakes and how I lost so much energy by trying to participate in these realities that were presented to me by others. And whenever I played into any of these realities, I lost energy, and my code got mutated. I got infected. That used to happen to me. So now I'm defragmenting the codes that are within me, so I can be in my own reality where everything is possible, where I create the timeline of whatever I say, if there is coherency throughout dimensions. Then whatever is spoken, it is at the same time source speaking itself into existence, and then you, the human avatar of that source, you are walking through that experience, that timeline. So let's rewind and kind of put this again into another perspective. Hi. To rewind this, I want to say again, it is sort of a holographic video game. This video game is like a cake of many layers. If you are not interfacing with all the layers, you might be playing in this layer. And since there is no coherence and cohesion with the higher realities, in this layer you might get lost in a labyrinth of something that is not harmonious. And everybody's lost. Oh my God, so where are you getting your information from? Right? Are you praying, are you invoking then that code to come from higher up and create coherence, and for you to be infused by this activation energy, infinite life energy, and create coherence within yourself? Or are you subscribing to the world around you, because that might be a little bit dodgy? Because even though it seems for everybody on this level that this is real, they're all lost in something that is not eternal. So it's like a projection of reality. It is a creation, but it's not really real, because it's just a glitch that created some experience, and that experience is simply for learning purposes, that to realign yourself with the real, which is eternal, and you are immortal and eternal being, and there is infinite energy. In this one, that is offsetted, that is a distortion of the original God code, that is just karmic. That just means you need to learn the lessons, what is distortion, and then come back to yourself, your true self. Here, if you stay here, you wither and die, because there's no energy there. So this reality is a phantom is consuming itself, and every interaction that you perpetuate in it might cause, well, just more loss of energy. Or it will, if you choose to perpetuate that, it will just, you will just lose more energy. In the original synchronized reality, where all dimensions are coherent, there is no loss. There is infinite energy, and every interaction is boosting everybody's evolution. So it's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win. Whatever you're relating with others, it's everybody's just receiving more and 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 more. And it feels so high that almost if you use this one that is a distortion, it's like a little bit uncomfortable. It's like just you're blasting with love, you're blasting with life force. And you can code by your word anything into existence. So learning the discernment between what is real and organic and what is not is just stopping to stop being a subscriber to a default thing that is a reality construct but is not real. So you see the world and you experience and you feel and you talk and people talk back, but like that's not real. Whatever people are saying, that's not perhaps the real reality. And all the ideologies and the patterns of communication and ideas and concepts of evolution and concepts of relating with one another, they're all distorted. And then the culture and the popular culture and the governance and the societies, everybody's just sleepwalking in this distortion. And when we're sleepwalking, we're not stopping to discern whether I should give my energy to even play within this. Because if you're not, then you are resynchronizing with the original reality. You just have to unsubscribe. That's the only thing, the power of awareness, to either send energy by giving something attention into that direction that is a distorted perpetual karma, or get out of that karma, get out of that code, get out of that program, get out of that reality by not participating, which automatically shifts you back into the organic one, because that is the eternal one which has a greater pull. How to discern? First, stop and make yourself empty. It's called mindfulness or something, yeah? Now observe, this is a holographic appearance in a space that is projected. And if it's running on a mutated code or it's running on the organic code, it's still giving you the experience of reality. You still have a body, you still have a timeline. Only if you are in the original timeline, in an interconnected architecture, everything is a love fusion. You experience everything as an extension of yourself, and you're just ecstatic. You're blissful. Now, if it's a distortion, something always feels wrong. There's always a problem, and then whatever energy you put into solving that problem, it will actually not solve it. It's actually going to perpetuate. So it feels like a hustle culture, a grind culture, greed culture. It's never enough. I can get no satisfaction culture. It's a lust culture. It's always consumptive culture also, because you need energy, and the more you try to play life, the more energy you lose, the more energy you need. So you can never get enough. There's never enough money, there's never enough food, there's never enough love, there's never enough relationships, and then this consumptive programming runs through our reality coding and our own bodies, and then makes us a predator, a consumptive sort of like a consumptive beast that just needs to get something. And then you always feel empty because you don't even know what's going to make you satisfied, and nothing's ever going to make you satisfied. So I've been on and off in these complete coherence, total online state of your unity with your God self and source and everything. And that feels so free and playful and just carefree and innocent. And whenever I came into the world, and if I talk with people that I didn't really protect myself, and I record the codes of what I'm listening to, well, I start to feel like I'm going crazy. And then I understand I used to live for 30 years in this mental state of craziness where everybody's living in, and it was the default. And then I got out of it and I felt blessed, and I was like shooting rainbows and going around in my little soul bubble where everything was infused with light, and I could like create whatever I wanted. And I wanted to have friends, but I didn't know how to actually discern if my friends are in the OG code or they're in some general karmic code. Because if I step down to play in the karmic code, it starts to eat me. Like interactions with people start to eat my energy. So I got really like into this distortion again, and I got all fragmented, and I really got into a place where I didn't feel good at all, and it took me months and months and months to defragment these corrupt codes and mutations. And I'm still healing from that last time where I just ran into the world, started playing with everybody, and I didn't have any discernment or any boundaries. So what I've learned from this is to have better discernment and observe better what is being presented and what is given to me to play with, and do I want to subscribe and participate, or I want to create my own timeline in which you can join me. And right now this is like 95 to 98% organic timeline, because still in my body there is still some code that is this mutated code that I'm still defragmenting. So I'm not completely online, and I want to be, and then I want to invite you into this portal and create coherence for all of us. And then we can co-create through coherence, we can co-create together magical realities that are unlimited. But first we need to get out of this mutation, out of this mutated matrix, because it appears as an experience, it appears as a timeline, as a body, as a script. And then we are, scrolling social media, and we're reading this script, and we're programming ourselves with this script, whatever somebody said. And sometimes it's automatic, we're on this robot mode and we don't stop to discern. And that becomes a problem, because whatever we record, then we project that. We are the creators of the reality. Whatever we recorded, we reproject that. So we may get stuck in these mutated realities, having a confirmation bias, a feedback loop that we always, if reality is confirming the same thing that's already recorded within us, so we're just re-looping that. We're re-looping that. And we are never ever able to get out of that if we don't change the code. when we change the code within, all of a sudden quantum jump, the timeline reassembles, and all of a sudden we are in a different timeline, maybe a beautiful one, organic one. And so something that is called the law of assumption teaches us that what we see as real and what people tell us is not actually real if we can assume better. So if you tell me, oh my God, Jovan, there is a problem, and I'm assuming you are without problems, you are full of blessings, you are your God self, then I don't have to believe what is being said. I don't have to believe what is being witnessed. I can change that by my assumption because I'm projecting my own reality. So instead of recording what somebody else is projecting, okay, in the co-creative field, I am observing that, but I'm having discernment that I don't want to make that real for me. So I'm like, thank you. I hear you, but I'll just assume that whatever you're saying, whatever is presented, is not true. Because I know only divine love is true, because I've been there. So my heart desire can I don't need to care what people say. My heart desire, I can assume that is true. And if I believe what people tell me, like it's not possible, you can't do it, there's a problem, there's a I don't know, pandemic, whatever we make up in these like distortions, I don't have to believe that. Then I'm an alchemist, which means I transform throughout my will because I am the will of God. My will is the will of God. My imagination is the imagination of the Absolute Self. So I have the power to create reality. On.